Video shared with me by some followers, and this is dietitian who is quite popular on Instagram, and he speaks about the benefits of ashwagandha. Let's first listen to this and then discuss in detail about what this is all about.
हम बात करेंगे आयुर्वेदिक हब अश्वगंधा के बारे में। अश्वगंधा, जिसे इंडियन विंटर चेरी या इंडियन जिनसिंग भी कहते हैं, आयुर्वेद में इसे फिजिकल और मेंटल हेल्थ को बूस्ट करने वाला रसायन कहा गया है। अश्वगंधा के जितने भी बेनिफिट्स हैं वो मेजरली इसके अंदर प्रेजेंट बायोएक्टिव कंपाउंड्स, विथेनोलॉइड्स और एल्कोलॉइड्स की वजह से हैं। अश्वगंधा के मेंटल हेल्थ बेनिफिट्स की बात करें तो पहला और सबसे ज्यादा प्रूवन बेनिफिट है स्ट्रेस लेवल्स पर। देखो, अश्वगंधा एक एडेप्टोजन है, मतलब ये बॉडी में क्रॉनिक स्ट्रेस को कम करता है बाय रिड्यूसिंग द कॉर्टिसोल लेवल्स। एंड सेवरल क्लिनिकल ट्रायल्स ने भी कंक्लूड किया कि अश्वगंधा रिड्यूसेस कॉर्टिसोल लेवल्स, जिससे इनडायरेक्टली आपके टेस्टोस्टेरोन लेवल्स को भी बूस्ट मिलता है, इन्फ्लेमेशन कम होती है, ब्लड शुगर कंट्रोल होती है और आपका मूड भी बेटर होता है। नेक्स्ट इज इंप्रूव्ड स्लीप क्वालिटी। अश्वगंधा में प्रेजेंट एक्टिव कंपाउंड्स नॉन रैपिड आई मूवमेंट एपिसोड्स को बढ़ाकर स्लीप प्रमोट करते हैं। इसके अलावा सेवरल स्टडीज में अश्वगंधा से मेमोरी, फोकस और कॉग्निटिव फंक्शंस भी इंप्रूव होते हुए दिखे हैं। मेंटल हेल्थ बेनिफिट्स के अलावा अगर फिजिकल परफॉर्मेंस की बात करें तो रेगुलर अश्वगंधा कंज्यूम करने से VO2 मैक्स लेवल्स इंप्रूव होते हैं, जिससे एंड्योरेंस बेटर होती है। और इसकी अडेप्टोजेनिक प्रॉपर्टी की वजह से ये आपकी पोस्ट वर्कआउट मसल रिकवरी में भी हेल्प करता है। डोजेज की बात करें तो बेस्ट इज सोने से पहले आप 600 mg अश्वगंधा कंज्यूम करो फॉर मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट्स। देखो, जब भी आप अश्वगंधा लो तो ऑलवेज बाय फुल स्पेक्ट्रम फॉर्म, जिसमें इसके सारे बायोएक्टिव कंपाउंड्स हो, लाइक KSM-66। एंड लास्ट, अश्वगंधा कुछ मेडिसिन के साथ इंटरेक्ट कर सकता है, तो अगर आप सर्टेन मेडिकेशन पर हो तो ऑलवेज कंसल्ट अ प्रोफेशनल बिफोर कंज्यूमिंग इट। होप दिस हेल्प्स।
Okay, so now that you have seen this video, I would like to apologize for the slight length in this particular reaction video because of this particular law. This is Brandolini's law, which states that the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude larger than is needed to produce it. So, for people who misinform other people and who put up false information, it's easy for them to do that within a few seconds or a few minutes. But for fact checkers who really want to go in depth into what they were claiming and how those were wrong, it takes time, which is why this video is going to be slightly longer than what I expected it to be. But I'm sure it is going to be very helpful for you. So please bear with me. So let's directly go into what was discussed in the previous video about various benefits of ashwagandha. So this person is a dietitian. He's not a doctor. He always wears that lab coat, the apron, to provide some credibility regarding his as a healthcare practitioner. But in fact, he's not a doctor, and he does a lot of good videos. I've seen some of his roasting videos, which are pretty good, and there are also some food related videos which are pretty nice. But then there are a lot of promotional videos where he tries to sell stuff, and I think ashwagandha is one such misinformation video, which I think we need to talk about in detail. So the first point is, he mentions that in the first slide, vithanolides or alkaloids are what actually benefits humans with ashwagandha consumption. But the truth is that no specific or single effective compound has been identified from ashwagandha yet, which is considered to be responsible for the so-called benefits that these people claim that ashwagandha has. So even though ashwagandha contains a lot of these compounds, vithanolides, alkaloids, steroidal lactones, etc., there is no single one compound conclusively proven to be solely responsible for its proposed benefits. So this means that actual beneficial compound is still not identified after decades of research, which becomes a big question mark. How does it work? So if you don't know how something works, the way that it works or the benefits that it produces also remain unclear. Now he goes on to talk about something known as adaptogen. So he says that ashwagandha is an adaptogen. That is why it has got a lot of effects on cognition, muscle, memory, recovery, focus, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But please know this: adaptogens or adaptogenic substances are mostly used by herbal medical practitioners or alternative medicine practitioners. It's not even a proper scientific term. The concept of adaptogen is not accepted in mainstream science, and it is not a marketing term. It is not a approved marketing term in European or United States, in the European countries and United States. So there has been a lot that has been written about adaptogens and the problem of using this term called adaptogen, because these people use these. This is not a science exploitation. You exploit people who are not well versed in scientific language using these possibly science sounding languages to trap you into getting these supplements or buying the supplements or feeling that there is something good or something beneficial in the supplements when there is nothing. So the take home message here is that adaptogens are supposed to be substances that help the body adapt to stress without any side effect, but their long term efficacy and safety, that is benefits and safety, has never been proven yet. The evidence for the effectiveness usually comes from animal studies, like what we see in ashwagandha, and there are very few published studies in humans, which tend to be small and lacking in rigor. Not very poor methodology, short follow up, no long term subjective, only long term, short term subjective evidence, but no long term objective evidence. So this is what an adaptogen actually is. So don't fall for these terms here. Now, the whole aspect of this presentation that he did, Bhavesh did, was he was talking from actual published papers, but so that sounds very legit, right? So it's very credible, but it's not that way. You look into this matter deeply. So these are the two studies that he showed. One was this particular paper, and the second was a systematic review of many herbs, of which he showed uh, Withania somnifera, which is ashwagandha, as one of the small underlying component here. This is something known as cherry picking. So when you only select evidence that is presented in order to persuade the audience to accept a particular position, and that evidence that would go against the position is actually withheld. So he did not mention a lot of studies on ashwagandha which actually proved that it is absolutely useless. So which is what I am trying to show you here. So if you look at this, this is very important. So if you look at this particular website known as examine.com, they have doctors and clinical researchers actually assimilating data and telling people what is right and what is wrong, and this is specifically for supplements. So this is, I have taken ashwagandha from the ashwagandha's full profile from this particular website for you. It's a paid website. I paid so that you can actually access this for free. So look at this. So he talks about anxiety and a lot of mood disorders, which ashwagandha actually improves. But look at this. This is anxiety part here, and these are all the outcomes, including sleep functioning, sleep latency, motivation, fatigue symptoms, depression symptoms, sleep quality, etc., etc. And there is a grade here, D, C, C. So this is the grading of evidence. So the A means multiple, mostly consistent studies suggesting at least a good a moderate effect, not even high, a moderate effect. B and C is fewer studies suggesting possible effect, but there is a lot of inconsistencies in the data, and actually the effect is very small for us to actually conclude anything. D is there is very little research on that topic, and studies are highly inconsistent. F is the evidence indicates that intervention may make the specific outcomes worse. So F means it is bad. D means we need lot more data. B and C means there is some data, but it is not conclusive. And A means it is conclusive, so that there is some moderate effect. So if you look at the anxiety part and all the outcomes within anxiety, you can actually say that it's mostly D, C, D, C, B. There is nothing A in it. And all the effects that they show here is all small. See, small decrement, small improvement, small improvement, small improvement. I mean, and these are all small studies, but this is assimilation of all the studies, including randomized control trials and meta-analysis of all those trials. So this is a complete picture of what you see on ashwagandha here. Similarly, if you look at this is about testosterone. So he was saying that the testosterone gets boosted and people feel much better and things like that. But everything is in C grade. All the studies of ashwagandha on testosterone are all C grade with very minute improvements which are not even conclusive. Next comes cognitive improvement. He specifically mentioned that cognition improves and people feel good, mood becomes better. But look at what the actual studies say. All these are very poorly conducted studies, which, and the only good evidence is for, I mean, even that is B, which requires further, it's not conclusive, it requires further studies. That is executive function of the brain. But other than that, nothing actually is improved by using ashwagandha. And these are very clearly, these studies are specifically uh, clarified and discussed in detail in this particular website. Now let's move on to metabolic health. So he said that blood sugars get controlled. So I thought maybe I should look at metabolic health also. Look at this. Almost all of these parameters in the blood markers are D. It's almost fail. Ashwagandha does nothing beneficial here, and the rest of them are all C. So blood glucose is also C. It's just one study participant, and that is only 17. One study with 17 participants, and very small improvement, which is not even consistent, not validated, not replicated. Complete utter nonsense. So none of these actually is beneficial when it comes to the clinical point of view. Now the next part. So I'm sure when I speak about these studies per se, somebody will come up and say, okay, meta-analysis. He showed a meta-analysis. Okay, he showed a meta-analysis, and here it is. But what did he show us? This is what he showed us, saying that this much of ashwagandha improves your whatever sleep quality and whatever. But this is what I've taken actually from the study, and this is what the study really says. So the study authors say that, I mean, these authors who have published this particular study, the systematic review and meta-analysis of effect of ashwagandha on sleep, says that the trials included in this review used very objective uh, evidences to assess outcomes. And they used many of these evidences that they have, I mean, the methods that they have used is not clear cut standardized methods, which means that uh, the outcomes that they measured and the results that they've derived are actually not very conclusive. This is what the study authors say. They have not used the gold standard for measuring these outcomes, which means that the studies that were included in this meta-analysis were actually poor. So garbage in, garbage out. So that is what meta-analysis essentially means in this context. Very interestingly, they also say that the findings from the 4 trials, I mean, they have included many trials. The major 4 trials were inconsistent and the sample size was small. Hence, the findings may be an overestimation and thus required more studies in the future. So, whatever has been concluded here is probably an overestimation. That is not the realistic truth. Very importantly, the overall evidence in this review ranged from low to high. In general, a low or unclear risk of bias was judged for most trials in most domains. So the whole aspect of understanding a meta-analysis is to look at how the quality of studies, the bias in the studies, the heterogeneity of studies. I mean, how standardized these studies were, what were the methods used. All of this need to be looked into, not just reading the abstract. So just showing the abstract and saying that this actually could work is pretty wrong. And this is why you need to learn how to read a paper. And I don't think Bhavesh knows how to read a paper. And that is why it is important for you to go into the paper and read it and see that the authors have mentioned here, we have encountered serious inconsistency, which means that you can throw this meta-analysis in the garbage, in the dustbin, and not actually promote it to people to buy ashwagandha. Now, apart from this, very interestingly, he again spoke about exercise and endurance. Look at these studies on exercise and endurance. Almost all of them are in D, which means that there is very little research on this topic. Studies are highly inconsistent. The effect is very null or very small, is either null or very small, which means that none of these studies actually prove that ashwagandha is good for exercise, endurance, or exercise related parameters. He just spoke about VO2 max, which means nothing in the clinical sense when it's done in a human trial. So none of these actually are realistic conclusions, and these are all just words thrown in the air to misinform you. But this is something that he did not look at all. So he mentioned that safety, efficacy, dosage, and all that stuff, but then he completely ignored this part. This is the main part. So if you look at studies on ashwagandha, you can see that there is something highly emerging on the side, which is side effects due to ashwagandha. So it can go from worsening depression to suicidal tendencies to something known as anhedonia, where you become like a zombie, to actual organ injury like this. So there are multiple reports and large case series which shows that ashwagandha can indeed harm the liver, and there is a lot of severe liver injuries happening across the globe due to ashwagandha. And multiple authors have reported and published, including us, about ashwagandha related liver injury in literature. So this is our paper, which is the largest paper in India, largest case series from India, which actually showed that ashwagandha led to severe liver injury and death in those people with pre-existing liver disease. So in those without pre-existing liver disease, the ashwagandha liver injury actually was self-limiting. They improved after the ashwagandha was withdrawn. But in those with pre-existing liver disease, they developed a condition known as acute and chronic liver failure, and most of them died without a liver transplant. This is pretty serious. You can't just say that go and consume ashwagandha 600 milligram every day to people. Somebody would have a pre-existing liver disease and you would never know. And you would actually come to know about it once you develop a liver injury and you're waiting for a liver transplant. And this is not the right way to promote healthcare practices. Now, if you look at the literature, you can see that there are a lot of cases being published from Iceland, USA, Japan, Germany, Poland. Very importantly, you can actually see that one of the main thing that Vithanone, that is one of the bioactive compounds in ashwagandha, does is to damage the DNA. So there is a chance that in the long term it can actually cause cancers in humans. But we don't have long term safety data. We don't have long term studies. All are short term, small trials done in humans. So somebody who's been consuming ashwagandha for longer duration may develop a cancer in the future. We don't know because we already have the data that shows that it can damage the DNA, which is why ashwagandha has been banned in Denmark because of these unknown or pretty much well-known side effects and many unknown side effects. It has been banned in Denmark, and the UK is also heading to looking at is heading for a ban for ashwagandha from their over-the-counter supplements. So this is what is happening in scientifically progressive societies, that ashwagandha is getting I mean, people are getting concerned about the public health when it comes to ashwagandha. So please note that everything that you see on the internet is not true. There are people who think they are giving you credible information, but in fact they may be not. I think probably they are ignorant, or they might be biased, because if you look at the specific ashwagandha supplement that Bhavesh mentioned, which is the KSM 66. If you look at the ashwagandha studies published in literature, in medical literature, almost the majority, more than 80% of these studies are done by the company that manufactures this. So there is an inherent bias in almost all the positive studies that are done on ashwagandha in medical literature, because this single company has done the maximum number of studies. So we can't take this as a positive thing because there is no actual replication or validation. So please be aware that snake oil salesmen come in different forms, and it is up to you to identify what is credible evidence and what is not. So I hope you learned something from this Brandolini's law that I had to put in here. And take care, stay safe.